If you boot up an Xbox 360 in 2026 and start scrolling through your library, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 is one of those games that instantly raises a question before you even press start. Does this still matter today, or is it just a relic of a different era in fighting games? Because on paper, it looks like a time capsule. It's a 2012 release built for a generation where fighting games were exploding back into the mainstream, but before the modern live service structure, before rollback netcode became the expectation, and before fighting games were constantly evolving through seasonal updates. And yet, despite all of that, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 still has a reputation as one of the most feature-rich and mechanically dense entries in the entire Tekken franchise. The first thing you notice when revisiting it is just how massive the roster is. This game just doesn't give you a handful of fighters and call it a day. It throws nearly the entire history of Tekken at you and says, figure it out. You've got legacy characters, returning favorites, and deep cuts that haven't seen the spotlight in years. And the tag system changes everything about how you interact with that roster. You're not just picking a main anymore, you're building a two-character team with synergy in mind. That means thinking about launchers, wall carry potential, recovery options, and how one character can cover the weaknesses of another. Even today, that kind of team building depth is something most fighting games don't even attempt. Once you get into matches, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 reveals its real identity, a game that is absolutely obsessed with momentum. Every hit matters because every hit can lead into a tag assault, and every tag assault can lead into an extended combo that deletes health bars if you're not careful. The tag mechanic isn't just a gimmick, it's the backbone of the entire combat system. You're constantly making micro decisions about when to switch, when to extend damage, and when to reset to neutral. And unlike more modern Tekken titles, where rage systems or heat mechanics add extra layers of comeback potential, this game is much more straightforward in its brutality. If you get opened up, you are going to sit there and watch your life bar disappear while someone executes a practice sequence. That said, the game is not just about offense. Movement still matters a lot. Sidestepping, spacing, and whiff punishment are as important here as they are in any Tekken game. In fact, because tag combos can be so explosive, neutral play becomes even more important. One mistake just doesn't cost you a chunk of health, it can cost you the entire round. That tension is part of what makes the game engaging even in 2026. It rewards discipline, but it also rewards creativity, because there are so many ways to route combos depending on your team composition. However, it's impossible to talk about Tekken Tag Tournament 2 today without addressing how it feels compared to modern fighting games. If you're coming from something like Tekken 7 or Tekken 8, this game will feel faster in some ways and more rigid in others. There's no modern quality of life structure guiding you through learning characters. There's no robust training guidance that holds your hand. You're expected to go in, experiment, fail, and gradually build understanding through repetition. That can feel intimidating, especially in 2026, where modern fighters are much more onboarding friendly. Then there's the single player content, which is one of the game's most noticeable weaknesses. You've got arcade mode, ghost battles, survival, and a training suite, but there's no cinematic story mode in the way modern players expect. There's no long form narrative campaign to carry you through the roster. Back in 2012, that wasn't unusual for Tekken, but today it definitely stands out. If you're someone who values single-player progression systems, unlockable cosmetics, or structured challenges, you might find the experience a bit bare compared to newer titles. But where the game loses in modern structure, it gains in raw replayability through systems alone. This is one of those fighting games where labbing a character can genuinely feel like learning a musical instrument. Every fighter has depth, and because you're always dealing with two characters, the complexity multiplies. Even after hours of play, you'll still run into situations where you realize your team has a new synergy you didn't consider, or a combo route you didn't know existed. That discovery loop is a huge part of why people still go back to it. Visually, the game still holds up surprisingly well on Xbox 360 hardware. It's not going to compete with modern high-resolution fighters, but the art direction does a lot of heavy lifting. Character models are detailed, animations are smooth, and stages have a kind of colorful vibrancy that avoids feeling overly dated. Performance-wise, it runs at a stable frame rate, which is critical for a game this dependent on timing and precision. Even in 2026, it still feels responsive, which is the most important factor any fighting game can have. Now, when it comes to multiplayer, things get more complicated. The reality is that online play on Xbox 360 in 2026 is essentially non-existent for most players. Even when the game was active, the netcode was never considered its strongest feature. So if your goal is to jump into ranked matches and climb a competitive ladder, this is not the version of the game that will satisfy that itch today. But that doesn't mean multiplayer is irrelevant. Local play is where this game still absolutely shines. Couch sessions, casual matches with friends, or even small community setups are where Tekken Tag Tournament 2 feels alive. The tag system creates unpredictable, high energy matches that are perfect for shared experiences. And that brings us to the real question. Is it actually worth playing in 2026? The answer depends entirely on what you want from a fighting game. If you're looking for modern systems, active online competition, structured tutorials, and a thriving ecosystem, then you're better served with newer entries in the genre. But if what you want is a deep mechanical sandbox, a massive roster, and one of the most creatively open tag systems ever put into a fighting game, then Tekken Tag Tournament 2 still has real value. It's a game that respects player expression above all else. It doesn't constantly try to reinvent itself or guide you toward a specific playstyle. It just gives you tools and says, go make something happen. There's also something to be said about how complete it feels as a snapshot of its era. This is essentially the peak of classic Tekken design before the series fully shifted into its modern identity. It represents a version of fighting games where experimentation was the main reward, not seasonal progression or ranked rewards. That makes it especially interesting in 2026, where so many modern games are built around long-term engagement systems. So ultimately, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 on Xbox 360 is worth playing in 2026 if you approach it with the right expectations. It's not a living competitive platform anymore. It's not trying to compete with modern fighters on accessibility or content structure, but as a pure fighting game experience, one focused on mastery, experimentation, and explosive tag-based combat, it still holds up in a way that's honestly impressive for its age. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you want to support the channel further, check out my Patreon, where my latest exclusive dives into why games keep launching broken and why no one seems to stop it. And as always, game on.